Regardless of the type of photography you normally do when you go on a family vacation or a business trip, every photographer becomes a travel photographer. Today, I'm sitting down with an author, a photographer who has a new book out on travel photography, and we're going to go beyond the basics and dive into what you can do before, during, and after your trip, regardless of where you're going, or how much money you're spending, or how much money you're not spending, so that you come away with impactful images that you're going to treasure and impress people with for years to come. Let's dive in. Howdy everyone, Aaron here from techphotoguy.com. Welcome back. Today I am excited to be interviewing Scott Kelby, who is a longtime author, photographer, traveler, which is the subject of the interview today. He has a new book out called The Travel Photography Book, which I was nice enough to get an advance copy of and had a chance to review. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And so welcome, Scott. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm happy to be here. Good
deal. So the travel photography book, not your first book. You've written quite a few books over the years. How many is this now?
Somewhere in the 106 or 107 range, something like that.
All right. Yeah. So there's that old saying about, the 10,000 hour rule, and that, to master anything, you need 10,000 hours with it. You're probably getting there with the writing, and and I appreciate that, because when you read the book, you can tell it's by somebody who's done this before. There's a flow, things make sense. I'm sure some of the credit on that goes to your editors and publishers.
Oh, yes.
But
my editor works late at night, do double time on my writing for sure.
But it does all flow together into a nice photography book, which, sometimes, let's be honest, when you read books by photographers, it's clear why they're a photographer and not a writer. But I appreciated the way this did flow. And so it's The Travel Photography Book, a nice, solid, simple, easy title. What makes travel photography special, right? Because if we're talking about the mechanics of photography, the exposure triangle is the same, whether I'm photographing in the studio or the mountains of Peru or the streets of Rome. What do you think sets it apart? And what do you think is the most important thing for photographers to realize when they approach travel photography?
Well, I think one of the things that makes it special is that as photographers, we're marrying something we love with something else we love. So we love travel, right? Travel is how we experience different parts of the world, different cultures, different foods, different sites, and all that stuff. So you take this wonderful vacation and then you marry it with something that you love, photography, and it's working towards chronicling the history of your trip, right? It's the visual story of your trip. So I think that there's a lot of things that make travel photography so wonderful. I think the biggest thing that I would tell photographers is, when you're traveling, make sure you don't get so sucked into the travel photography that you miss the trip. It is very easy to spend the whole trip with the camera stuck at your eye. And so you're seeing this beautiful place, you're seeing France or Spain or, Morocco through a little tiny square. And I always tell people, you're on vacation. You want to come back with wonderful photos, right? You want to come back with great photos. And we can talk about what I think what makes a great travel photo. Mm-hmm. Well, now that I've uncorked that genie, I'll just tell you.
Yeah, let's roll right
I'll
into
forget
that.
to tell you later. So I think what makes a great travel photo is one that makes you want to visit that place. Like, you show somebody your trip and they're like, oh my gosh, I got to go there. It's like, right. I just returned from 9 days in Prague. I just led a photo workshop in Prague. And it's interesting about Prague. When you mention Prague to Americans, they're like, oh, where's that?
Right.
And you're like, well, it's a former Soviet Union, breakaway, country. And it's in the Czech Republic. Oh, where's the Czech Republic? So finally, if you go, it used to be Czechoslovakia. They're like, oh, yes.
Right.
Yes. So, but when people see the pictures from there, it's been unanimous. Like, oh, I want to go there. So I think that's what makes a travel photo. It makes someone see that and really want to go there. right? And so I think that's what makes a travel photo great. I do warn photographers again, enjoy your vacation. Like I loved seeing Prague. Prague is just a beautiful city. I think it's probably, if I had to choose, maybe the second most photogenic city in all of Europe. It's just stunningly beautiful, much more beautiful than I was expecting. And like I said, I led this photo workshop, and everybody, 10 of them had never been to Prague before, out of 12 people.
Okay.
And they were all like, I just had no idea it was this beautiful. It was this clean. It was this inexpensive. It was so cheap, Aaron. Oh my gosh. It was cheap on a level I haven't experienced in many, many years. It was just everything was so inexpensive. And I thought Lisbon was crazy inexpensive, but this is like next level. So, but I think that's kind of what makes it special. And we also covered what makes a good travel photo. And it's just marrying all that stuff together. If you love to travel and you love photography, this is made for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's good you brought up the cheap aspect there. I think sometimes when we start thinking about travel, we either think of, the really expensive destinations that we think of, like, oh, I want to go to, Paris, right? Which is somewhere that I know you've talked about a lot and enjoy photographing. But like not necessarily the cheapest place to go to, or we think of a really, we think of a really exotic, expensive destination, maybe, either that, or we think of like the ultimate other extreme of like a very impoverished, type place. But there's a lot that's in the middle where you can go view some great historical or natural things that are not necessarily, totally impoverished third world, but are also not the crazy expensive things to go. So that's a good reminder, because as photographers, we're always looking for a deal, and we spend lots of money on our gear and other things. And, and so speaking of gear, let's roll right into that, because this is not a book about gear for the most part, which I kind of appreciated seeing, right? I mean, you do talk a little bit about gear, but the gear is in service of making the photo, and it doesn't have to be complicated. So talk a little bit about kind of your key gear points for travel photography.
My biggest gear point, and it's something that when I'm leading a workshop, I stress again and again and again and again, and that is to travel as light as you can. Because, and I tell people, I said, if you come back from this trip and you didn't have a good time, it won't be because you didn't have the lens you needed. It'll be because you brought every lens you own. I take two lenses, and I try to talk everybody into, if you can get away with one or two lenses, you're going to have a better trip. You're going to get great shots. You're not going to have that moment where you go, I would have won a huge award if I'd had this other lens. It's just I two lenses. So one body, two lenses. I took a 14 to 35, and I took a 24 to 240. So with those two lenses, I'm covered all the way from 14 for a super wide angle, all the way to a 240 telephoto. Both lenses are lightweight. They're easy to carry. They're small. They're not big, heavy lenses that you're like, oh. And I carried everything around in one sling bag. So I have a little sling bag, fits on my side. When I want to change lenses, you swivel it to the front, you unzip it, you open it, and what's in there? One lens. All you do is take off the one you got, put the new one on. In that bag, I have two filters, just two neutral density filters. So if I come across a fountain, or I come across a river or a stream or a waterfall or whatever, I can do a long exposure. Or, this is a big one, and I talk about this in the book, if I come across a place with a lot of tourists.
Right. Because that's the thing with travel photography, right? I mean, like, my own personal experiences, how many times have you ever been somewhere and it's like, this would be an awesome shot if all these people weren't here doing the same thing I'm doing, right?
Right. And I have a couple of strategies to talk about in the book. One of them is the neutral density filters. So you can set up in the middle of the day in front of whatever monument you want. You could be in Rome or in Paris or wherever you want to be in front of. And of course, if it's a popular thing, there's going to be a lot of people there. Put your camera on a tripod, put on at least a 10 stop. So an ND filter just makes the scene darker.
Right.
It fools your camera into thinking it's way darker than it was. So it leaves your shutter open for longer periods of time. But in the day, what I do is I stack them. I take a 10 and then I screw another 3 on top of it. So I might be able to, on a reasonably, sunny day, leave my shutter open for 4, 5, 6 minutes at a time. And so what you do is you're in this crowded square, you put it on a tripod, you put your filters on, and you take the shot. As long as people are moving, like during the thing, when your exposure's over, there'll be nobody there. They'll just all be gone. However, if someone stops and makes a phone call and sits there on their phone, they will be there after 4 minutes. Like everybody, the key is everybody keep moving. Luckily, people do. They walk into a square, they look, they take a couple of shots of whatever the monument is, and then they move. Well, let's say it's Trafalgar Square in London. Now, if they sit there and have a coffee, they're going to be in the final shot. But you can get rid of most, if not of all, of the tourists using that trick. The other trick, and this one's guaranteed to work. You don't have to worry about people moving or not moving. Is get up really early. Get up a half an hour before sunrise. Wherever you show up, I don't care where it is, you'll be the only ones there. Now, the key is the best light is a half an hour before sunrise. Once the sun comes up, 10 minutes later, it looks bad. And that's when all the photographers show up. So they come after the light is bad. So get up early. I've taken groups out in front of the Vatican Museum in Rome. It's not really in Rome. It's in Vatican City. Someone's out there going, it's not in Rome. Okay. So I've been at the Eiffel Tower, up at the Trocadero, where you have this beautiful view of the Eiffel Tower. We're the only people there. When you get up in the morning and you go, there's nobody there. Tourists do not like to get up early, Aaron. But if you're one of those photographers that's like, I want to get an empty shot with no one around, 0 people there, that's the key. Get up early. You're going to have beautiful light and no one there but you. And as you're leaving, here come the crowds. An hour later, there's 500 people where you were standing.
Right. Yeah. And that makes sense. That being there at the right time is so important. And, especially on, a trip where you're only there for a limited amount of time, right? Depending on where you're going, you might just have, a few days or even just one day in a particular location. And so you want to make the most of that, while you're there. It's not like it's it's not like it's down the street from your home office or whatever, where you can go try again next week if today didn't work out. Which I think leads into another, topic. And you talk about this a lot in the book in a few different ways, which is just the importance of planning when it comes to travel photography, right? Because if you have, if I've got 3 days in Paris, I don't want to spend my time in Paris planning, right? I want to be photographing. I want to be doing other things. And you talked about, kind of some tools and websites that you use to do some planning. So let's talk about kind of before you go, what are the most important things that you do or that you recommend other photographers do when they're going to a location, that they haven't been to before, so that they can be as successful as possible when they get there?
Yeah, I think I totally agree that the research part is so much of the success. My first step is I go to a website called 500px.com. So it looks like 500 pixels, all one word.com, but just the abbreviation for pixels, PX. And it's free. You can use it for free. You don't have to join or anything to use it. There's a search bar. Just go and search the town you're going to want to go to. So when I was going to do my Prague workshop, I go to 500px, I type in Prague, I hit go, and here comes beautiful photos from a very, very serious photography community all over the world. And you'll see just fabulous photos. What I love about 500px is you click on a photo, and very often the photographer will tell you not only exactly where they took it, and they'll tell you, like in just regular people words, like they'll go, this was taken from the rooftop bar at the Excelsior Hotel at the corner of this street and that street. Make sure you take the elevator up, and then when you come out, take a left. I mean, they'll be very descriptive about where it was taken. A lot of times they'll even give you the exact GPS coordinates and a map, like it was right at this spot. I left a big X on the floor. That's where I shot. So those are really handy. So that's my first stop. After that, I go to Pinterest. Now, what's different about Pinterest is 500px is photographers posting, here's my photo of Prague. Pinterest is regular people. They're not photographers. Normally, they're not serious photographers,
Right.
but they'll go, look, I've gathered all these beautiful photos of Prague. And then they put them in. Now, the only thing that the downside of Pinterest is it is now absolutely packed with ads. Like it is overflowing with like every other thing is an ad, and things that you don't think are ads turn out to be ads. So you do
Right.
spend a lot of time sifting through the Pinterest ads and links to people. And like when you load the page, all of the first ones will be the top 10 Instagrammable spots and wherever you're searching for. Those aren't bad to look at because sometimes you'll find places that you go, yeah, I kind of like to go there. So those aren't bad either. That's my second stop. My third stop is simply Instagram. Just type in hashtag Prague and you'll find all kinds of photos there. So just those three sources alone, and then it doesn't hurt to have Google Maps to help find some of these
Right.
places. One thing that I'll do if I don't know, like there was a location in Paris I wanted to photograph, the Sacre-Cœur, which is it's a very famous cathedral up on a hill. But this particular view, I'm like, well, where's this from? I have no idea. I've never seen this. Started looking for store names and things in the pictures,
Mm-hmm.
and I found a bar, and I was able to go to Google Maps, type in the name of the bar, and I went to that exact spot and was able to get that shot. So I do use Google Maps to some extent, but it starts with those three. My order is 500px,
Mm-hmm.
then Pinterest, then Instagram. But those are great resources. It's also inspiring. You're seeing a
Right.
lot of beautiful photos, and you're like, what I would tell people is take a look at those photos, and I'll bet you'll find a theme. The theme that you'll probably find is the ones that are on the first pages that are really highly rated and really popular were taken in beautiful light. They're not taken in the middle of a harsh day full of tourists. Number two is the ones that people love are very simple photos, very, very simple. It's not full of tourists. It's not, a bunch of busy stuff going on in most cases. They're very simplified images, right? So the photographer is taking great care. I saw a wonderful picture once of someone sweeping in the Taj Mahal. It looks like there's no one there, and there's just a person sweeping in this doorway, and there's the Taj Mahal. Well, there were thousands of people there that day, but the photographer was very careful to go, this is the story I want to tell, just of this person. And they had to be very patient to
Mm-hmm.
get to a moment when there's thousands and thousands of people at the Taj Mahal to capture this moment. Well, that's the kind of photo that you will see on 500px, is a very simplified one. And the third one is, you'll notice a theme of color. Vibrant colors, very, very, people love beautiful colors. You'll see some black and white for sure, and I
Mm-hmm.
do. The right black and white photo is so powerful, but you'll see a lot of very, very colorful shots. So those are some things to, when you're looking through those sites, watch how often those three themes appear. And sometimes you'll see a triple header where it's beautiful light,
Right.
a simplistic thing, and then beautiful color. Like that's the home run right there, right?
Yeah. And I think that's all great tips. And that's all stuff you can do days, weeks, months in advance of your trip, so that when you get
Yep.
there, you're not spending time, trying to figure out what to do. Right.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Hey, Aaron, I keep on my phone here in my notes app. I actually
mhm.
have a shot list. So I have a shot
Right.
list that I take. So while I'm out there, I'm like, okay, where are we going next?
Mhm.
I know the things that I want to shoot, and I've written them down, and I use a little checklist where I could just check, got that
Right.
one, did that, and I kind of plan my day around it. I'll look at
Mhm.
Google Maps and say, okay, well, I want to go shoot this cathedral. And then from there, the next closest place would be this garden. And then from there, so you're not just going from one end of town to
Right.
the
Right.
other, back and forth and all that kind of crazy stuff. So it does help quite a bit to have not just a loose plan, but a written plan. Like this is where I'm going.
Mhm. How often do you find that, you make those plans and then you get on site to wherever it is, and you have to abandon those plans because there's a street fair going on that's blocking access to something you wanted to do, or the building's covered with scaffolding or things like that? I mean, do you find that's a common thing you run into, or have you had pretty good luck with with planning and then executing on it?
Okay, so well, there's two things on that. The first one is I always tell people the first day you get in a city you've never been in, one of the greatest things to do is take that little 2-hour bus tour.
Mm.
The very first day, morning,
the tourist tour.
take the tourist tour, and don't take your camera. Just take your phone, because you can use your phone to take a picture of something, and your phone will automatically have GPS in it. So you'll know exactly where it was taken. You can click on it in like the Apple Photos app, and it will take you to a satellite picture of here's where you were standing. So take that 2-hour tour, because, for example, the first time I went to Rome, I wanted to get up at dawn and shoot the Colosseum. Well, on my first day, I took the 2-hour tour. You mentioned it. The Colosseum was covered in scaffolding, just absolutely covered. And I was like, well, there goes that. Now there's another thing. I mentioned I was just in Prague. The last morning we were there, my buddy and I, who's the co-teacher in the class, before we left, we were going to get up and shoot this town square. And we went and went on the web, and you can do this so often. We looked at a live cam. Do you know how many live cameras there are in these cities? Right, it's unbelievable. So we went to we just searched for Prague live cam. And it had all these places, the castle, this, okay. And you know what? We did not know this. They were setting up for a race. And the exact shot that we wanted to get, they had set up 80 blue porta potties, right, covering the whole area. So we knew tomorrow's a sleep-in day. We are not going, so it does happen. It happens rather often. So between that half hour, taking the 2-hour tour is great to find out, just like you said, oh my gosh, this thing's under construction, or they just have banners up, or there is a stage set up for a festival, and now you can't get the opera house anymore. You'll find out all these things on the tour. You'll also find out on the tour places you never dreamed of that you go, ooh, I want to come back here for sure. Just take a picture real quick so you remember, and that you have the GPS coordinates. But yeah, those live cams are great to find out. Do I really want to go to the Coliseum tomorrow morning? So those are 2 tips for you right there.
Yeah, that's great. And we talked a lot about, what to photograph. I thought it was interesting. One of the things you also included in the book was what not to photograph, what not to spend your time on when you're traveling. Obviously there's a bunch of these in the book, but I'd be curious, are there a couple of those that come to mind that, you feel like, photographers who are serious photographers, whether they're professionals or serious hobbyists, they go, but then they waste their time by taking, a certain type of image that probably isn't going to be worth it in the end. What are a couple of those that maybe you want to share?
I was in Bermuda with a buddy on a business trip, and we went out. We got there a day before, and we went out shooting, and we were at some old ruins or whatever. It was kind of cool, and there were chickens. Just for whatever reason, there were chickens up there. Well, my buddy is just shooting these chickens to death. He's just click, 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 and I went over to him and I go, buddy, when you get home, you're not going to go, man, I nailed this shot of a chicken. I go, it's a chicken. We have chickens back home, right? This is like, if you really want to go to a farm and get the right light, or I don't know what you're going to do with a really great shot of a chicken, except for sell it to the colonel. But he was spending all this time. And I talk about this in the book, it's one thing to take a picture with your phone, or even take a picture with your mirrorless or DSLR, that I want to remember this from the trip. So remember those donkeys we rode? Here's a picture of the donkeys.
Right.
I don't share that picture of the donkeys with the photography community.
Right.
I don't put it on Facebook, but I do put it in the album. Like I make photo books for the family. Like when we take a family trip, we come back, and that's just my thing to make a photo book. Right. So I make a photo book. I'll include all the family stuff in there. And in there, the picture of the donkeys are okay. But I see people just going donkey, 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 and they're trying to get the great shot of the donkey. You're just chronicling the fact that you took the donkey, like we took the donkeys up the hill to get to the whatever.
Right. You're not going to put the donkey into your portfolio. You're not putting the donkey on 500px. You're not.
It's not going on the wall in your house. These are just they're supporting your story of your trip, and that's fine. But the photographer in us we can't help it. We wind up trying to get a great shot of the donkey.
Right.
And like you said, Aaron, you'll wind up wasting a lot of time where you could have been shooting something awesome and you're shooting a chicken or you're shooting a donkey or you're shooting a goat. Oh my gosh, one more goat picture. This is not a group of wild stallions coming across a
Right.
lake, splashing water, and it's an amazing. I don't mean that. I
Right. You're
mean
not
that
talking wildlife photography. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, look, a chicken, it's like, come on. So that's listed in kind of the long list of things that you're going to get home and go, why did I shoot that?
Exactly. There's photography stuff and photographers making good photos. And then there's all the other stuff about the trip. I think one of the things that a lot of photographers are working with when they do travel photography is that, like you mentioned, they're on a family vacation or they're on a business trip and they have some time to do some photography while they're there. Which kind of introduces the whole aspect of, sometimes you're traveling with non-photographers, whether that be a spouse or kids or, business partners or things like that. What have you found to help you be successful when you are traveling with non-photographers, who maybe have different priorities for the trip than you do? So that, A, you can make the photos that you want to make, but B, you also stay, on good terms with your travel partners and make sure that they enjoy the trip as well. What helps us find success there?
Well, one thing is you have to be quick. You have to just be quick about it because you want to sit there and you want to work a scene and stuff. And you got to realize that, most of the time that's not going to happen. You're on a tour. You got on the bus at 9 a.m. after the light's already good. So this is one of the reasons why I tell people it's so awesome to get up early in the morning.
Right.
Get up before the tour, before you're with a bunch of other people, before you are holding up the group. But once you're on that tour, now you are responsible for making everybody have a good time. So the secret is to just really, you got to get pretty quick at it. Mm-hmm. So the great thing about it is for travel photography, you can pretty much set your settings before you go out. To where, for example, one thing that I would say that most people get burned on when they're doing travel photography is they're walking along through the city and you see an interesting scene down the alley. Maybe there's a chef and he's feeding a couple of dogs and it's really cute and he's got his big chef hat on it. And so you turn and you're like, oh, look at that, and click and you shoot the shot. Well, remember, you're standing out in the middle of the street. It's a bright sunny day. Down that alley is a little dark, or inside that butcher shop or wherever you're shooting, and your shutter speed falls down real low. And you wind up going back and looking at the photos that looked so amazing at 3 inches in the back of your camera. You open them on your computer and they're soft and they're out of focus and they're blurry. So the one thing that I tell people to do is set your camera up for success so you're not messing with your settings during the day. And the way to do that is to turn on a feature that your camera has called Auto ISO. So Auto ISO, it's two parts. So I'm going to make this clear. A, right. Turn on Auto ISO. B, go and set your minimum shutter speed. It should be in the same menu. Set your minimum shutter speed for at least 1/125th of a second, or maybe even 1/250th of a second. And what that means is you're not going to get any out of focus shots anymore because the light was too low. It's automatically going to raise your ISO to enough to where your shutter speed will get to a minimum of 1/250th of a second, let's say, which is most people can absolutely handhold any camera at 1/250th, even 1/25th is probably is pretty good. And that's what I would set mine at. And then just take your shot. And wherever you go, all the shots are going to be sharp. Now, there's this little trade-off. Your shot might be a little noisier, right? Because it might have to raise your ISO. Right. But if you have a choice between a blurry shot
right,
or one that's sharp and crisp, but it's a little noisy, I imagine you're going to take the noisy shot all the time. Right. Now, your phone already uses that. Your phone already has Auto ISO turned on all the time. That's why you can be outside and you walk in a restaurant and take a shot. You're not using flash and it still looks great, because your phone automatically adjusts your shutter speed to where you always get a sharp shot. So that's a great thing. So you're not worrying about, you don't have to keep sitting there and wait, hold on, I'm changing my settings. Right. Oh, I'm shooting in manual mode, wait, this way you just go click, click, click. You're just bang, bang, bang. You see something amazing happening, you shoot it really quick and you can keep moving and you're not making everybody else angry while you're, because you'll spend so much time messing with settings You don't have to do that if you have auto ISO on.
Right. And the good news is that now in 2022 and beyond, I mean, you and I have been in photography for a while now, and there's maybe part of our brain that still hasn't adapted to the fact that high ISO shots in our current mirrorless and DSLR cameras, they're going to have way less noise than they did in the past. And B, even if they do have some noise, there is software now, like the Topaz Denoise AI plugin is fantastic. Where
ON1's AI noise,
ON1's is great as well. And so if you get that shot that has some of that noise, the good news is we've got computers that can clean that up a bit for us. Right on. Cool. What would you say is probably, the big differentiator that you've seen, maybe kind of the one most important thing that differentiates photographers who come back from travel photography, whether it's a family vacation, some spare time on a business trip, a specific photo trip, what's the number one thing that you would say separates them from the ones who come back disappointed? Is it the planning? Is it the timing? What's the big thing that, people really should keep in mind?
I really think that it is kind of a research thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an idea of what you're looking for, in other words, if you've looked at thousands of images on 500px,
mm-hmm.
and you actually don't just look at them and go, wow, that's great.
Right.
But say, why is that great? And just ask yourself, why do I like this photo? Is it the light? Is it the color? And you go in your mind and you're thinking, these are the kind of photos I want to take. Like you have an idea. If not, you're just going out and hoping to get lucky, and you're going to come
mm-hmm.
back probably disappointed. But if you know, I want to shoot in good light, I want to get rid of tourists, I want to simplify my scene. Like if you have a plan,
mm-hmm.
that's really going to make the difference. And honestly, it's looking at photos. And do you know how quickly you can look at thousands of photos on the internet today?
Right.
You can see hundreds of them in 15 minutes just on Instagram. You can see hundreds of them on 500px. If you just look at, and I would just say, this is so underrated, just looking at beautiful photos. But it's not just go, wow, that's nice. Be a detective for a moment. Be a detective and say, why is this photo so beautiful? What is it about it? And then when you start to realize, wow, it's the light and the simplicity and the color, then you're on the lookout for, I'm looking for a yellow wall with a red door. I'm starting to look for these patterns and these colors, and you start just writing down, what is it that I like about these photos? You've got a playbook for success. You've already done your research to figure out where you want to go. Now that you know where you're going to go, how am I going to capture this place that I'm going? So go look at other people's, let's just use the Eiffel Tower, for example,
mm-hmm.
because it's such an iconic thing. Go look at other wonderful pictures of the Eiffel Tower. You're going to be in that same place. You're going to have it right in front of you. Is it going to be at 2:00 in the afternoon with harsh light and tons of tourists? Or is it going to be at 5:15 in the morning in beautiful light with a beautiful sky and nobody there? You can set yourself up for success. I mean, let me put it this way, Aaron, if you and I were out shooting and you did no research and I did it, and you were standing beside me at 5:15 in the morning with the tripod and a camera, how are you not going to come away with a fabulous shot?
Right,
you've done no research, you've done nothing. But
mm-hmm.
if you're right there beside me in the morning and we're set up in a decent location, you could teach a laboratory test animal to run up, press the button, and they would get a fabulous shot. And so what's the secret? That's it. Do your research and get there in beautiful light. Look at the photos that other people have taken of these beautiful locations, and you're setting yourself up for success. How could you not get a great photo in those situations? So that I think is a big part of it.
Exactly. As when I first got into photography kind of seriously as a hobby, one of my friends, Robert, he would often say, as we're on these photo trips, he's like, you can sleep at home. So if we're on the trip, we're gonna be out early, we're gonna be up late.
Yeah.
Hey,
Aaron, I'm sorry, if I can just share one real quick thing
sure.
to this. So I was teaching a workshop in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I do a portfolio review of every single person in the class, and so it's just us by ourselves, just spending time. And I look at this woman's portfolio, and she brought me this beautiful printed portfolio, and I open up the first shot and I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh my gosh. And I turn the page. Oh, these are gorgeous. Oh my gosh. I mean, page after page,
Mm-hmm.
Aaron. And then I turn the page and I'm like, what happened here? Who took this shot? And she's like, oh, well, those other ones were taken on a workshop. And this one I took on my own. And Aaron, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, horrible light, horrible location, horrible everything. It looked like a completely. So when you do,
Right.
she knew what the right things were,
Mm-hmm.
Aaron. She knows if I get up early, if I go to some place that's, I mean, and it's set up for success. I'm in front of
Right.
something beautiful. Like she was in front of that barn in Wyoming that
Right.
everybody shoots, and it's got beautiful. I mean, you can't go wrong if you're there in the
Exactly.
morning. But if you go there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's going to be like, what happened
Right.
here? She knew the recipe, but when she was by herself, she didn't follow it. When she's in the workshop, she got up early. When she's by herself, she's sleeping in. Don't sleep in. That should be the name of the book. Don't
Don't sleep
sleep
in.
in.
Right.
Don't sleep in.
Good deal. That really is such a key point of, know what you want to do, make that plan, and then do that. And, yeah, you can do the non-photographic things at 2 p.m. You can take a nap. You
Yes.
can go visit the
Yes.
restaurants you want to visit and take photos of your food with your iPhone, as we all do. Right.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So good deal. Well, I appreciate your time here today, chatting with folks. I would recommend this book definitely, whether you're traveling, locally, across the world, across the country. Check out the travel photography book. I'll drop some links down below so you can grab that directly. And Scott, as always, it's been great chatting with you. I've appreciated all you've
Thank
given
you,
back
Aaron.
to photographers over the years with your books, your photos, the classes that you do through Kelby one. And thanks again. I appreciate having the opportunity to chat with you today. And everyone else, take care. And I'll be back again next week.
Thanks, Aaron.